Hello everyone, back tuning into the 12th and penultimate Winter 2019-2020 update from GWV. So can you believe we started these updates, Winter of 2019-2020, on the 1st of September? We are up to update number 12. We've only got 13 penciled in. So yes, it's true, this is the penultimate winter update of this season. And I think this has been by far the most exhaustive season of updates. Every update has been over an hour, really have been pushing the boundaries of what we can show you, and I just hope that you found these updates interesting and informative. And of course, we've got a big update to go today, and we've got next week's update too, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've still got plenty to be talking about this week and next week, but we are getting ever closer now to releasing the winter forecast. That's going to be released on the 1st of December. So all of these updates, they are all building up forensically a picture that's developing the forecast, and we will bring it all together on Sunday the 1st of December, and that's when we'll release our forecast. So we're getting ever closer to crunch time, but we've still got a couple of updates to go, and as well a final season one roundup that we will do on Saturday the 30th of December. So that will be the day before we release the winter forecast. Right, so again on the 12th winter update for you very shortly. Just say there is going to be a live stream that goes with this winter update on YouTube, on GWV's YouTube channel between 5 and 6 o'clock. So if you've got any questions or you want to let us know what you thought about this winter update, then you can get involved with the live stream. I'll be on the YouTube channel live between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening, and we'll talk about this 12th winter update. I found the live streams interesting as well. That's something that's new and added to this season of winter updates. So you will have to let me know what you think to the live streams as well. Are they complementing the updates okay? Hopefully they are. Right, so big thank you to Analogs Guru James Ackrill, of course, for getting the analogs together for us. We're going to pick up exactly where we left off last week, talking about October data, and then the second part of the video, like the final part of the video, I suppose, is going to become an ENSO special. So if you want to know what that could mean for our winter in terms of the current situation with ENSO, that will be later on in the video. A lot to discuss before we get to that. So big thank you to Analogs Guru James Ackrill. Also big thank you to our good friend Richard Trott for giving us the winter updates GIF. This video is going to be a long video, so if you can't watch it in one go, don't worry, it will be kept at GWVservice.com indefinitely. Be placed on the winter updates page this evening, probably around 8 o'clock after I've got done with the live stream. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well, and you'll be able to have a read of that and come back and watch the video on demand when you would like to do that. Right, so I think that's everything that I've got to tell you. Let's get on with the video. So, as I say, we're picking up exactly where we left off last week, talking about October rainfall data. So, it was a pretty wet October in 2019. This is from the Climate Averages page at the UK Met Office. You can see Northern Areas actually have a relatively dryish month, but for England and Wales, it was quite a wet October. Had 149 millimetres for England and Wales precipitation, which does place it at the high end of the range, really. Was quite a wet October. Now, last week, of course, we talked about October and September precipitation. We combined them both, because they have been a pair of wet months, so we combined them both and looked at winters following wet Septembers and Octobers. This time, we're going to just look at October on its own, though. So we're talking about October precipitation around 149 millimetres. That was where October 29 came in. So we're looking at Octobers that were around that sort of ballpark in terms of their precipitation. So the first October we're looking at is October 1843, and this is winter that follows it, 1843, 1844. And this is a cold winter. It has above average heights out to our west and northwest too. It has below average heights to our east and northeast, and so it's a strong blocking feature, and the jet stream doing something like that. It's a cold and wintry winter in winter of 1843-1844. The next October, that was very close to October 2019 for England and Wales precipitation, 149 millimetres, was October 1846. This is how winter of 1846-1847 is shaping up. It has, again, quite a strong blocking feature up to the north, with below average heights down to our south. I'm not sure it's quite as conducive for cold compared to the first analogue we just looked at, but nevertheless a pretty cold winter would be expected there as well for 1846-1847. The next October is going to be 1855. This is how the winter of 1855-1856 is shaping up, with above average heights to the north, below average heights to the southwest, doing something a little bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. That could also be another relatively cold winter. Looks like the jet stream is on a southerly track going in a northwest southeast directory. What am I talking about? Trajectory. It's been a very long day. I haven't been feeling all that well, actually. Just to explain about that, I haven't been feeling a bit off colour today, Saturday, when I'm recording the video. The previous night, Friday night, I had quite a bad nosebleed, and I've just been feeling a bit off colour. My eye's not very good, so I may sort of stumble over my words, make a few mistakes. It's just because I'm not quite with it. I haven't been quite with it all day, and I found myself having to do this winter update at 11 minutes past 10 on Saturday evening, when I'm feeling a bit unwell. So that's, if I make any mistakes, stumble over my words, talk nonsense for a few seconds, that's the reason why, and I hope you just bear with me. Right, back to the analogues. This is how the winter of 1870-1871 is looking, following on from England and Wales precipitation of close to 149 millimetres in October. This one also looks unsettled and potentially a little bit cold. It does have some northern blocking up towards Greenland, with low pressure to the south, and again probably bringing in the wind generally from more of an easterly direction. The next update of the next winter is 1875-1876, and this one again with low pressure down to the southwest, high pressure up to the northeast. That's a rather drier winter, I think. Could be quite cold, could be bringing in the winds from the east, although it's a relatively small ridge. A little bit inconducive, that one. I doubt it's overly cold, but probably a drier winter compared to what we've seen so far. The next winter is 1885-1886, following on again from October 1885. This one is a colder winter again, below average heights to our south and some above average heights out to the middle of the Atlantic. Not a particularly strong blocking signal, but I reckon we would have had some pretty cold snaps in there at the very least. Next up is 1886-1887. This one looks rather flatter type pattern, although it does have some above average heights to the east. It has below average heights out to the northwest as well. Rather flatter there for 1886-1887. Probably a little bit on the cold side though. Quite a long gap then to 1906-1907, so this is our next winter, following on from October. England and Wales precipitation close to 149 millimetres in October. This one with below average heights to our southeast, above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, low pressure up to the north. Not a particularly cold winter, rather westerly, but it does have a colder start to the winter, and in fact it does have a white Christmas in 1906. Next up is 1907-1908. This one with above average heights to the west and also to the north, below average heights to the east. Interesting about this winter is that it gets cold very late on. So overall, I think this is a relatively mild winter in 1907-1908, but very late on, and I'm talking about really late on into the end of April, there is a famous blizzard at the end of April 1908. We've recorded a historic video about that at one point in the past. The next winter is 1909-1910. Very unsettled winter, this one. Deep low pressure through the country, a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic. So that's just a proper old deluge of winter in 1909-1910. Very, very wet winter indeed. Next up is 1916-1917, following October, England and Wales precipitation of around 149mm. Now, this is a colder winter. There aren't many cold winters in the first sort of 40 years of the 20th century. I've talked about this in videos before. There's a long gap from 1895 to 1940 without any severe winters, and most of winters in that sort of 45-year window are relatively mild, but there are a few colder ones, and one of them is 1916-1917. This is a very cold winter in the middle of the First World War, and it brings in those easterly winds, very cold and snowy winter in 1916-1917, turning up in our October England and Wales precipitation analogues package. Next up is 1923-1924. This one with above average heights out to our west and northwest, below average heights to our south and southeast. The winter of 1923-1924 is relatively mild for the UK, but many parts of Europe are actually cold, and we're just on the periphery of that cold a lot of the time. But much of Central Europe, in particular, has a very cold winter in 1923-1924. Next, we have 1928-1929. This is another cold winter in that relatively mild period from 1895 to 1940. Again, there aren't many cold winters in this period, but one of them, or another one of them, is 1928-1929. Of course, you can see the reason why, because it has this large blocking area of high pressure up to the north, and it has low pressure down to the south, and that means that we bring in these easterly winds. So it's a cold winter, it's a relatively dry winter, but it is a cold winter as well in 1928-1929. And they have a really long gap through the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and our next winter is the winter of 1976-1977. Again, following on from the wet October in 1976, we're close to the 149mm that we had for October 2019 in terms of England and Wales precipitation. This is how the winter of 1976-1977 is looking. An unsettled winter overall, lots of low pressure in the west of Europe, blocking up to the north. The interesting thing about this winter is that it's front loaded, so it's cold in the early part of the winter, in the front of the winter in December and to early January, and then it gets much milder later in January and February. 1977 is a mild month, so that's why overall it's a little bit in between, but the blocking signal does tell us that at the very least there was a cold December, and of course it also has a bit of a white Christmas some places as well. Another long gap through to 1998-1999, so this one is Atlantic driven 1990s winters, most of them in the 1990s were. This one is bringing in those westerly winds, and it does have a few cold snaps through January, February and March 1999. They don't last all that long. Overall, it's a relatively mild and unsettled winter. Quite a cold winter, though, over Scandinavia, I think. Next up is 2001-2002. Showing up in our analogues package quite a lot this year, this one, I think. So, with this one, we've got above average heights to our south, below average heights to the west and the north. This is one of those charts that doesn't really tell you what winter was like, because although the early part of winter, December to early January, was dry and actually very cold around Christmas and New Year, the second half of January and February turns mild and also very wet in 2001-2002. And then I think last up, or penultimately, perhaps, or perhaps not, we have got the winter of 2002-2003, with below average heights again to our west and south, above average heights, let's change the colour, above average heights up to the northeast. It looks like that should be a cold winter, doesn't it? It looks like we should be bringing in easterly winds quite a lot of the time. Actually, it wasn't a particularly cold winter. It's one of those winters that just never really came together somehow. The next winter is 2004-2005, again following October, England and Wales precipitation of around 149 millimetres. This one with above average heights out to our west and a bit of an Atlantic flow. So this one is relatively mild for the first part of winter, although it does have a little bit of a white Christmas, actually, interestingly. It does have a little bit of a white Christmas in 2004. Otherwise, the early part of winter is mild, and then late in the winter, so sort of February to early March, it gets much, much colder in 2005. And then finally, we've got 2013-2014. This is a deluge of winter, of course. We really don't want to see this one repeated after such a wet autumn. So this one just unleashes the Atlantic. Look at that horrendous trough of low pressure over and to the west of the country. There's the Azores High. We've got ridging across Eastern Europe. And also got this deep trough into Northern America, of course. That brings very cold air down into much of the States. That blows up the jet stream, and off we go into what is a tremendously wet, also very mild winter 2013-14 with a lot of Atlantic storms. So, putting all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking following October, England and Wales precipitation of around 149 millimetres. And for December, we get a ridge of above average heights out to our west and middle of the Atlantic, below average heights tending to be over and to the east of the country. And there's a little bit of high pressure up to our north as well. There is some cold potential, actually, in those Decembers. It could potentially be a little bit on the cold and wintry side. That's how all Januaries combined are looking. Again, you would say there might be a little bit of wintry potential there. We have got northern blocking to our north. It's particularly centred kind of like to the far north of Scandinavia and up in towards the North Pole. Below average heights tending to be over and to the south of the country. Looks like we could be bringing in relatively cold easterly winds at times with that one, so a rather cold signal in terms of the all January's combined charts. That's how all February's combined are looking. What we could be seeing here is like a near miss type winter, I have to say. Still has a bit of a blocking up towards Greenland, but not as strong as in January in particular. Below average heights like covering the western part of Europe. We could almost be pulling in quite cold winds with that, but I suspect actually on average, and most of those Februaries are probably relatively mild, but quite unsettled. And then all Marches combined, following England and Wales precipitation close to 149 millimetres, looks like that. Higher pressure tending to be around Iceland and Greenland, lower pressure tending to be to the southwest. We could be bringing in some easterly winds, so maybe a little bit of cold potential in the Marches as well there. And then finally, bringing it all together, this is how all winters combined are looking following October, England and Wales precipitation of around 149 millimetres. So it is almost a cold signal, this. It does have above average heights in the North Atlantic and extending to our north. Tends to have below average heights to our south and through central parts of Europe. We are tending to be bringing in the winds from an east to northeasterly direction as well. The only thing I'd say is that the blocking isn't overly strong. It's not a really, really strong blocking signal. That is a very strong blocking signal over there, over towards the Pacific with those red colours. With this, it's kind of like greens, yellows, so there is a blocking signal there, clearly. But with the below average heights across the west of Europe, it could actually be like, a lot of these winters could actually be like near miss winters, so they get very, very close to being really cold and wintry, but they just don't quite come together a lot of the time meaning that they could be like teaser winters, I suppose. A lot of these could be rather teasing us with the potential for cold or very cold weather, but just never quite managing to get together. But clearly there are some very cold winters in that Analogs package, like 1916-17 and like 1928-1929 too. Right, so that's it. That closes the door on the October data. So we've looked at October CET, we've looked at October England and Wales precipitation, we've looked at September and October precipitation. That's as much as we can show you for October. So that really does close the door on October data. And of course, we'll hopefully be able to bring you some stuff on November next week. That's what I'm hoping for. Anyway, a little bit of a November special, but early days on that. Anyway, I'm going to pause the video there. Go and get yourself a drink of water. Why don't you go and get yourself a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits. We shall meet back here in around 2 seconds' time, and we shall go through the second part of the video. We'll look at things like the QBO, Eurasian snow cover, and that kind of thing. So I'll see you back here very, very shortly. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume the 12th Winter 2019-2020 update. So in the first part of the video, we was talking about October England-Wales precipitation and looking at winters that followed October's with a similar England-Wales precipitation to October 2019 at 149 millimetres. As I said before the break, that really closes the door now on October data, but we are hoping to bring you some data possibly for November, possibly even for the autumn overall, for next week's 13th and final Winter 2019-2020 update, where I'm hoping that's going to be a real epic. Maybe doing more analogs than we've ever done before. Who knows? We'll see whether we can bring that together for you. I haven't spoken to Analogs Guru James about that at all, so that's going to come as a real shock to James. But we'll see what we can get together for the 13th update. Anyway, I'm going to go on now and do the second part of the video. Just to say, at the beginning of the video, we started off with 75 tabs for this. So I'm going to try and bring this in at around an hour, going through 75 tabs. It's going to be hard work. Later on in the video, it's going to become an ENSO special. But the first thing we're going to look at for this second part of the video is the QBO. So we're at NASA here, and we're looking at the QBO westerly and easterly phases going back to 2016-17. So if you look at this week by week, of course, through winter updates, where we've got these sort of sandy, browny coloured areas. That's where we've got the westerly QBO, where we've got the darker blue and green coloured areas. That's where we've got the easterly QBO. Now, we have, of course, been in a westerly QBO. You can see this just here. That's 2019, of course, there. So we're still in the westerly phase of the QBO right now, but up here at the top of the atmosphere, we do see that the easterly QBO is beginning to descend. So we got 10 HPA over here, all the way down to like the surface level down there. So you can see that very gradually, this green-blue area is sinking down through the atmosphere. We've got to get it to 30 HPA. We've got to get it to this dash line just here that hopefully I can draw straight along it, and it'll be okay. So we are very close to pushing the easterly QBO down to 30 HPA. That's kind of like the top of the troposphere, if you like. We're very, very close to moving this easterly QBO down to 30 HPA. We're just a little bit short of it. We're still just about in westerly QBO. I reckon this is going to go from the west to the east phase of the QBO during this winter. I think it's going to do it during the winter. It may be early on, it may be December, maybe a little bit later, but I think, and we talked about this in one of the earlier winter updates, of course, through reanalysis, we explained what it could mean for the winter. So I think this is going to be a west to east transitioning easterly QBO winter. The easterly QBO is on its way, not quite there yet within the troposphere, but it's very close to it now. And I reckon it'll be over this winter itself that we go into the easterly phase of the QBO. Looking at the temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole, this is how things are currently looking in terms of the temperature in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. So again, come back to this chart. This is kind of like the very top of the atmosphere just here. That's 10 HPA, and that's kind of like 30 HPA. That's 50 HPA. By the time you get 50 HPA, you're well and truly down into the troposphere, and then that's going lower down further. So 10 HPA is like the top level of the atmosphere in the stratosphere, or virtually towards the top level of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. So that's the temperature trend at this point of the year in that top stratospheric level at 10 HPA. It should be getting colder. It should be cooling down at this time of year over the North Pole due to the fact that we are going into the winter. Of course, the grey line tells us we are in a trending colder period. The black line shows where we are. We're actually colder than average in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA right now, and have been for quite some time actually, through most of this autumn so far. The black line has been trending under the grey line, so throughout this autumn we have had a colder than average stratospheric temperature. You will notice it had just ticked up ever so slightly with that black line just there. I don't think that's going to be sustained. If anything, this may drop down closer towards minus 18 in the next few days. We'll see about that. But certainly the stratospheric temperature at 10 HPA is colder than average. If you go a little bit lower down to 30 HPA, let's see how things are looking. And again, it's a colder than average story. The grey line shows that temperatures at 10 HPA are trending cold at this time of year. The black line shows we are under average, colder than average at 30 HPA. So both 10 and 30 HPA, both levels that we look at, are colder than average with those stratospheric temperatures at the moment. And that's been going along with a very strong zone of wind as well. This is on weatheriscool.com, and loads of different coloured lines on this. I haven't got time to explain what all of them are depicting, but if you want to know, then have a look at the first winter update that we did. Seems a very, very long time ago now, doesn't it? But the first winter update we did on the 1st of September. So the most important line is probably the black line just here. That shows that zone winds are getting stronger at this point of the year. Again, we're at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole and the Arctic. So as the temperature gets colder at this time of year, so the zone of winds gets stronger, and this is a powering up of, or usually it's a powering up of the polar vortex. It's usually driving the polar vortex and driving the westerly winds too. Now we have had, earlier on this week, we did have a record-breaking strong zone of wind at 10 HPA for the time of year. Look, the blue line shows that we were pretty much at record-breaking levels a few days ago. We are at the start of a massive deacceleration of the zone of winds, however. That's where we are right now. So already the zone of winds are weakening. The green lines are the GFS ensembles, and they're forecast to weaken further over the next 2 weeks, so that by the time we get through to like the beginning of December, the zone of winds are down here. That's a big drop in the strength of the zone of winds without any kind of southern stratospheric warming to cause it. To go from there to like there in a matter of a couple of weeks, that is a massive deacceleration of the zone of winds, and it's happening without a southern stratospheric warming to cause it. So that's very unusual what we're seeing there. It's not a reversal of zone of winds. A reversal would take those lines down to here, down to the 0 line and below it. So it isn't a reversal of zone of winds, but it is a massive deacceleration happening without any kind of southern stratospheric warming to cause it. Now the other coloured lines, we've got 4 pink and 1 blue line. They are taking this deacceleration of the zone of winds even further, and most of them anyway, are going into a reversal of zone of winds in December. So our dates are just here. That's November, of course. This is December there. That's January. And, of course, this is going to be February over here. That's as far as we can go at the moment with these charts. So we've got this one pink line up here, but it's really strengthening the zone of winds and going to almost a record strong zone of wind in February. That's a bit of an outlier though compared to these other CFSV2 members. So we've got these two just here going just about to a reversal of zone of winds at the beginning of December, one of the pink and one of the blue lines. We've got this one down here, of course, that is also going for a proper reversal of zone of winds, going down almost to -20. That's probably developing a sudden stratospheric warming, I would have thought, to go to that sort of level. And that's in around the middle of December. It's sometime close to Christmas. And then also we have got another pink line just here that's going for more of a reversal of the zone of winds as well. So it looks like the CFS, 3 out of 4 of them, are taking this deacceleration of zone of winds that we're beginning at the moment, taking this deacceleration of the zone of winds and actually going to reversal of the zone of winds. I suspect these two are doing it, these two just here, are doing it just from the deacceleration. This one I would have thought is going for sudden stratospheric warming, and then this pink line that does eventually get down to there later in December, that also probably going for a sudden stratospheric warming. So all looking very, very interesting here from a stratospheric level. Remember, the reason we look at what's happening in the stratosphere is that when the zone of wind is going to reverse, and particularly if you get a sudden stratospheric warming, it can translate back to a risk of northern blocking. Now, what's even more strange about this particular period, and this particular autumn, is that despite the fact that we have had a, let's go back to it, despite the fact that we have had a colder than average temperature, let's get 10 HPA back up, despite the fact we have had a colder than average temperature at 10 and 30 HPA, along with virtually a record-breaking strong zone of wind, the Arctic oscillation has actually been in its negative phase. So typically, when you have a cold average temperature in the stratosphere over North Pole, and you have a very strong zone of wind, that would typically be a signal for the polar vortex to be strengthened at its roots in the stratosphere. You've got a strong polar vortex, you are driving low pressure over pole, you are driving the westerlies, and that would usually, on this chart, be associated with a positive AO. Remember, the Arctic oscillation is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. It's not driving anything in its own terms, just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So when the atmosphere, when the AO is negative, then the atmosphere is going to have blocking, usually over the North Pole, and a weakened polar vortex. When the AO is positive, the atmosphere will have, or the troposphere will have low pressure over the Arctic and the North Pole, and it will typically be a zonal westerly signal. So, since around the middle of October, the Arctic oscillation has been trending increasingly negative. That's where we are with it right now. The Arctic oscillation is solidly in negative territory. The GFS ensembles are the red lines at the end. They're forecasting the AO to stay in negative territory really for the rest of November. Very late on, we may start to see the AO trying to get itself towards positivity in early December, but basically the Arctic oscillation is negative now, and it's likely to stay negative until the end of the month. This is a signal for high pressure within the northern latitudes, signal for blocking as well, and it is telling us that the troposphere, what's happening in the troposphere, where we've got this higher pressure signal, is at odds with what's happening in the stratosphere, where actually things are, or have been, pretty conducive towards a strengthened polar vortex and low pressure over the Arctic. And I'm just wondering whether it's the troposphere, what's happening in the troposphere, that's causing this deacceleration of zonal winds. I reckon the troposphere could be starting to affect what's happening in the stratosphere, and that is what's causing the deacceleration of zonal winds. So the troposphere and the atmosphere are starting to couple up, but it's happening from the trop up rather than the strat down, if that makes sense. Looking at the North Atlantic oscillation observed and forecast chart, we see this. So the black line again shows where we've been with the NEO, red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NEO to go. That's where we are right now, weekly positive. Looks like over the next sort of week or so, the NAO is going to trend to weekly negative. So we went for a very, very prolonged run of negativity of the NAO starting in late April and going right the way through to the beginning of November, actually, or the end of October. Generally, the NAO throughout all of that period was in a negative phase. Since the beginning of November, it has been a little bit more on the positive side, as we can see just here. Only weekly positive, but it has been a little bit more on the positive side. But it looks like the GWV ensembles are forecasted to go weekly negative through the rest of November. So not truly getting back into a genuine positive phase of the NAO. Moving on to something completely different. This is how the solar disk is looking on our side of this today from solarham.net. So we've got a spotless solar disk. There are no sunspots whatsoever to be seen anywhere on the solar disk. How often have we said that through this season of winter updates? So therefore, solar activity is at very low levels, being forecast by Solarham, and it's expected to remain at very low levels as well for the next 3 days at least. This is the GWV's 12th Winter Update Solar Activity Tracker, updated by a good friend, Mr. James Ackrill, up to the 16th of November. So it just tells us again what we've been seeing throughout this season of updates, as does, of course, these images of the solar disk that we've been looking at every week. We're at solar minimum, and we're going to stay at solar minimum through this winter. I think this is the solar minimum winter of solar cycle 24. So the thick red and green lines are our trend lines, and they continue to be flatlining away on the floor of the chart. They're going nowhere fast. They're just flatlining away, not doing very much at all. The orange line is depicting each individual day's worth of sunspots. So we are getting the occasional day with sunspots that we can see here. However, the days without sunspots are outnumbering the days with sunspots. And when that happens, that tells you that you're at solar minimum. Really, look how different that is compared to like the end of the year last year, and then going up to May this year, when that orange line was very regularly lifting up, albeit at a very minimal level. This is a very low level of solar activity, but very regularly that orange line was lifting up, telling us that most days had at least a small number of sunspots. But since May, that's when we dropped into solar minimum. You see the change from there onwards. Since May, the days without sunspots have been outnumbering the days that have sunspots, and that tells us that we are at solar minimum now, and we're going to stay at solar minimum for the rest of this year and also the winter of 2019-2020. So, very quiet on the solar disk. This is also depicted up here by solar flux. That's sort of just flatlining away. This is like the noise, if you like, the noise that's being emitted by the sun in a way. And the very quiet sun, of course. You see how these lines sort of spiking up just here when we have these sunspots. But since May, notice how this pink line just been kind of flatlining away, not really doing very much. Very, very quiet in terms of solar flux. Very, very quiet in terms of sunspot numbers. And it's all just telling us that we are at solar minimum. A couple of updates ago, we explained what that means in terms of what that could mean in terms of this winter through reanalysis. So go back and have a look at our winter 2019-2020 solar special. It's been sent through by our good friend Richard Trott. So this is showing the current spotless day and current stretch of spotlessness. So currently we've had 4 days of spotlessness. However, more dramatically is the number for 2019. So overall for 2019, we have had 240 days this year. That is 75% of the year that has had no sunspots. That is deep, deep solar minimum. I think it's quite unusual within a calendar year to be at that depth of spotlessness, to have 75%, 3/4 of the year so far has had no sunspots. I wouldn't expect that to change before the end of the year. So by the time you get through to the end of this year, it does look as though 3/4 of the year will have 75% will have had days without any sunspots. That's deep solar minimum. This is probably going to be one of the deepest solar minimums that we have had for quite a long time. Of course, the last solar minimum, the solar cycle 23, from like 2008 through to 2009, that was also a very deep solar minimum as well. But I think this could even be a little bit deeper than that too. Big thank you to James and Baritcha for sending through that data. Next, we move on to 2019 Atlantic hurricane season. So this is winding down very quickly now. We'll just very quick go through the total numbers. So we're currently standing for this hurricane season 2019 at a total of 19 tropical depressions, 17 tropical storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major category 3 or above hurricanes. That is unchanged from last week. This season is winding down very quickly, but it was an above average season. It says here on the Wikipedia page that it was the fourth consecutive above average and damaging season going back to 2016. Of course, the peak was 2017, which was hyperactive. This hurricane season hasn't been hyperactive, but it has in fact been above average. But it looks like hurricane season is winding down very quickly now. Eurasian snow cover next. So this is how things were looking when we did last week's 11th Winter 2019-2020 update in terms of Siberian snow cover, Russian snow cover, Scandinavian snow cover too. That's from the 8th of November. Let's have a look at the latest chart, shall we? That's the 15th of November, and there we go. So we haven't really gained much across Western Russia. We remain actually with a bit of a deficit in terms of snow cover across Western Russia, but look how well we're doing across Scandinavia. Big gains across Scandinavia through this week, particularly Norway, but also coming down into some central parts of Sweden as well. So we're doing very well for Scandinavian snow cover and compared to last week, but haven't really gained much across Russia. To be honest, I always think Scandinavian snow cover for us in Western Europe is probably a little bit more impactful than Russian snow cover, but other people would disagree on that. But anyway, we really have had some good gains across Scandinavia for snow cover in the past week, but haven't gained much across Western Russia. Notice also parts of France have had some snow, and even you'll notice just a little splodge there over Scotland. So we're not doing too badly at all. Now let's get rid of that, and we shall compare this year with previous years going back to 1998. So this is the 15th of November 2018. Notice much better for snow cover across Scandinavia, much better across Scandinavia for snow cover this year compared to 2018, but not as good this year for Western Russia perhaps. Right, let's run through. That's 2017, and again I think we're doing a little bit better for Scandinavian snow cover, but at this point in 2017, and probably a little bit behind though for Russian snow cover this year. That's 2016, so we are behind 2016 for both Scandinavian and also for Russian snow cover. In fact, by this point in 2016, we have pushed the snow cover into the eastern part of Europe, so we are well behind 2016 for snow cover. That's 2015, so doing much better than 2015 for Scandinavian snow cover, a little bit behind for Russian snow cover. That's 2014. Again, we are doing much better for Scandinavian snow cover and probably quite closely matched for Russian snow cover this year. That's 2013. We're doing better than 2013 for Scandinavian snow cover and also probably for Russian snow cover too. That's 2012, so we're doing better than 2012 for Scandinavian snow cover right now, probably quite closely matched for Russian snow cover. That's 2011, doing much better than 2011 for Scandinavian snow cover, For Russian snow cover, though, we are lagging behind. That's 2010. So 2010, we're actually, look how far back the snow had pushed into central parts of Russia by this point in November 2010. So we're ahead for Russian snow cover this year. Probably a little bit behind, though, for Scandinavian snow cover. We really was seeing the snow cover piling up across Scandinavia at this point, 2010, maybe hinting at the December to remember that was about to be unleashed. Who knows? That's 2009. I think we're very closely matched for Scandinavian snow cover to 2009, perhaps a little bit ahead. If anything, for Russian snow cover, we're probably quite closely matched again. That's 2008. Now we're ahead of 2008 for both Scandinavian and for Russian snow cover too this year. That's 2007. So at this point in 2007, we had pushed for snow in some central parts of Europe. We got it through to Poland anyway. So we are well behind for Russian snow cover for 2007. For this year, that's where we are, so we just go to there. So we are well behind 2007 for Russian snow cover, but I think we're a little bit ahead for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2006, so we're behind 2006 for Russian snow cover, but I think we are quite close to match, maybe probably ahead actually, Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2005, we are well ahead of 2005 for Scandinavian snow cover. Look at the difference in snow cover this year to 2005. We're also ahead for Russian snow cover as well. That was a very, very slow start to the snow season, 2005. That's 2004, we're ahead of 2004 for both Russian and also Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2003. We're well ahead for Russian, for Scandinavian snow cover, probably quite closely matched for Russian snow cover. That's, whoops, that's gone wrong, so let's carry on. 2002. So for Scandinavian snow cover, we are ahead just, I think, for Scandinavian snow cover, and we're behind for Russian snow cover 2002. That's 2001. Ahead for Scandinavian snow cover, probably behind for Russian snow cover. That's 2000. Ahead again for Scandinavian snow cover, and for Russian snow cover, probably quite closely matched. 1999, we're ahead for Scandinavian snow cover. We're a little bit behind for Russian snow cover. And then finally, 1998. So for that year we are behind 1998 for Russian snow cover, but we're ahead for Scandinavian snow cover. We have done very, very well for Scandinavian snow cover this autumn, I have to say. Been a really good season for Scandinavian snow cover, except in the very, very far south. Most parts of Scandinavia covered with snow. We've done very well, not as well perhaps for Russian snow cover. Right, the rest of the video is going to focus on ENSO. So let's deal with the oceans first of all, and then we'll look at ENSO specifically. So this is how the oceans were looking when we did last week's 11th Winter 2019-2020 update. We've got our areas of interest, of course, which is the ENSO region. Just here, we've got the North Pacific over there. We've got the North Atlantic over here. Let's deal with North Pacific and Atlantic first of all. So that's how things looked last week. When we did last week's winter update. This is the latest. So in terms of the North Pacific, still have this area of warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies. That's not going anywhere. We're going to have to contend with that for this winter, and it's one of the things that probably goes against us having a colder winter in Northern Europe, actually, but it could induce a colder winter for northern parts of America, perhaps. So that's the North Pacific dealt with. Over in the Atlantic, so again, going back to last week, that's how things looked in the North Atlantic last week. This is the latest. So, relatively warm through the tropical Atlantic. You'll notice it's quite warm down there. We have got this expanding area of colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies in the North Atlantic, though. Although going close to Greenland over here, it is still rather warm. That's left over from what we had in the summer and the start of the autumn. But I'm getting a little bit concerned about this expanding area of colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies appearing here in the Northern Atlantic Ocean. That that would be something that doesn't particularly look conducive to a negative LEO. You're looking for a tripole for that, so you want it to be warmer around here, you want it to be cooler there and there, and then you want it to be warmer down here, the freeway band. If anything, that's beginning to shift a little bit away from a tripole, which is not something I was expecting actually. So we shall see where that's going in next week's update. In terms of the ENSO region, we remain at ENSO neutral. That's what the rest of this video is now going to focus on. So this is how the ENSO region was looking last week. So again, it's sea surface temperature anomalies along the equatorial Pacific Ocean from Peru over here to Indonesia over there. So yes, we're on the warmer side of average, definitely. Most of those areas have like pale yellow to slightly orange colours. That's a bit above average, but it's around ENSO neutral on the warm side. It was last week. This is the latest. Very little change actually. So it's warmer than average, yes, but not by enough to be at an El Nino. It's ENSO neutral on the warm side. There's been very little change, very little deviation on that over the past week. This is looking subsurface wise, so underneath the surface of the actual Pacific Ocean. This is how the anomalies are looking. Again, you've got Indonesia just there. No, you've not. You can get rid of that. I said I'm a little bit struggling because I'm not feeling all that well today. So I think I've done okay though up to now. I don't think I made too many mistakes. You'll let me know in the comments, I'm sure. But actually, you've got Peru over there, and you've got Indonesia over there. I must have been off school when they was teaching geography, mustn't I? So this is like the surface of the equatorial Pacific Ocean just here, and then we've got the depths of the Pacific Ocean down there. That's like 50 meters, that's 150 meters, that's down to 300 meters. Very, very deep ocean, of course. So you can see that underneath the surface, actually things are relatively warm with those subsurface temperature anomalies now. The colder than average subsurface temperature anomalies have been shoved down to depth in the western part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean to a depth of around 150 to 200 meters. But closer to the surface, actually, it's warmer than average just here, and particularly so over here. This is like in the eastern portion of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So between around 50 and sort of 150 meters, we've got subsurface temperature anomalies of around 1 to 4 degrees above average. So it is quite warm at depth. That might just about get us towards an El Nino, but I have a feeling we're going to stay ENSO neutral. Have a look at some models in a moment. This is how the SOI is looking. This is Southern Oscillation Index. So again, it's just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, not driving anything in its own terms. It just tells us what the atmosphere is doing. When the SOI is in its negative phase, then when the SY is in its negative phase, then the atmospheric setup will be reflective of El Nino. When the SY is in its positive phase, then the atmospheric setup will be reflective of La Nina. If we come down here, we can see the atmospheric pressure measurements. So we've got Tahiti just there, the Tahiti column, just whatever Darwin column is just there. That's what the SY is doing. It's measuring the atmospheric pressures between Darwin and Tahiti. And then, of course, we've got our daily numbers just here. So going back to earlier in November, we did have a couple of very, very negative days there. 4th and 5th of November going down to minus 34 both days. That's a very atmospheric setup, very strongly reflective of El Nino. But on the 7th of November, we go up to plus 15. Then we go negative on the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th, and the 13th, and the 14th. So those, again, atmospheric setups reflective of an El Nino. Then we're, for the last couple of days, so the 15th of November at 0.51, and the 16th of November at plus 1.84. That's the atmospheric setup, kind of like towards ENSO neutral. So again, the negativity that we see there in the SY tells us that the ENSO region is on the warm side of average. Definitely, we're on the El Nino side of average, but we're not quite reaching El Nino threshold. So we're on the warm side of ENSO neutral, and that's where we're expecting to stay. This is from the CFS V2. So temperature anomalies on the side, dates are along the bottom in monthly periods. So the all important numbers are 0.5, whether above or below average. To get an El Nino, you need to be half a degree or more above average. To get a La Nina, cold event, you need to be half a degree or more below average. Where we are right now is on the warm side of ENSO neutral, so that is true ENSO neutral, of course, just there. Neither above or below average with the sea surface temperature anomaly. We're above that, so we're on the warm side of ENSO neutral, but we're just not reaching this all-important half a degree above average. And the black dashed line is the ensemble mean. That's staying on the warm side of ENSO neutral through the winter. So CFSV2 is forecasting an ENSO neutral winter, but on the warm side. ECMWF doing something very similar around ENSO neutral as well. So same idea, temperature on the side, dates are along the bottom. That's where we're starting off at right now with the ensemble plume. So again, we're on the warm side of ENSO neutral, not quite reaching El Nino threshold. Over the next few months up to like the winter, that's January, just there, we're around ENSO neutral, possibly just dropping the temperature anomaly a little bit, but sticking around ENSO neutral with the ECMWF. And then with Jamstec, again, it's the same idea. With Jamstec, we have just about got to El Nino type threshold. We've just about got to that half a degree above average. But notice the ensemble mean is dropping back closer to true ENSO neutral anyway. Definitely not an El Nino, just an ENSO neutral winter being forecast by Jamstec. We can actually go back and have a look at how things are looking in past Novembers at this point of the year. So this is 2018. So at this point in 2018, we was facing a sort of a weak to moderate El Nino. It's actually a weak El Nino in the end, but we was facing a weak El Nino at this point in 2018. What about November 2017? That's how things were looking. So in 2017, we was facing a weak La Nina. We was down here facing a weak La Nina. Let's go a bit further back to November 2016. That was also in November 2016. We was also talking about being in a weak La Nina. Just in a weak La Nina for winter of 2016-2017. Let's go further back again to November 2015. We know what this is going to show. Very, very dramatic. Look at that. That's the Super Nino of the winter of 2015-16, going to 3 degrees above average. Incredibly strong El Nino for winter of 2015-2016, and that's why it was curtains for any chance of a cold winter that winter. This is November 2014. We was facing a weak El Nino in the winter of 2013-2014 in November 2013. This one is going to be November 2013. This was our last true ENSO neutral winter, actually. It seems hard to believe. We have to go back to 2013-14 for the last true El Nino neutral El Nino winter, but it was in fact winter 2013-2014. El Nino neutral on the warm side. Let's go back to November 2012, and this is how things looking in November 2012. So again, another ENSO neutral winter, and on the warm side of ENSO neutral. That's quite interesting because that winter actually finished up on the cold side of ENSO neutral. November 2011, this is how things were looking. Strong La Nina for the winter of 2011-2012. This is November 2010. So, again, strong La Nina for the winter of 2010-11. The December to remember in December 2010 happened with a strong or a moderate to strong La Nina. November 2009 was going into a moderate El Nino. It finished up a little bit stronger than that, actually, but that was the forecast in November 2009 from moderate El Nino. 2008, where is it? There's November 2008 just there. So at this point in 2008, we was talking about being in a weak La Nina. And then finally, I don't think going further back than this, so let's go to November 2007. And we was looking at a moderate La Nina for the winter of 2007 and 2008. How much further back can we go? So we can go to 2006. Let's do that then. Last year we can go back to, it's November 2006, and we was facing at this point a weak to moderate El Nino. So, just to show you, exoneutral winters are not actually all that common. We tend more often to be either at El Nino or at La Nina, so it's not all that common to be at exoneutral. But there we are. It looks like this is very, very likely. This winter is very, very likely to be an exoneutral winter. And I'm going to pause the video there. When we come back, we're going to talk about what that could mean, what it could mean being at and having an exoneutral winter following on from El Nino last winter. So for our analogues, we're going to be looking at exoneutral winters following from an El Nino winter the previous year. I'll pause the video there. We'll meet back very shortly, and we'll go through the third and final part of the video and go through those analogues very, very shortly. See you soon. Right, we're back, and we're ready to resume the third and final part of the 12th Winter 2019-2020 update from GWV. I hope you've been enjoying the video. I hope I haven't been making too many mistakes as I've been going. Like I explained earlier in the video, I'm feeling a little bit unwell today. Felt a bit poorly last night, Friday night. So I'm recording this late on Saturday and not feeling 100%. So if I've made any mistakes as we've been going along, I'm very sorry about that. I'm sure you'll let me know what you think in the comments. But the final part of this video is going to be talking about exoneutral winters. We've established we are at exoneutral and we're likely to remain at exoneutral for this winter as well. That's very much the way the modelling is going. So on this chart, of course, let's just get rid of that. On this chart, this is the cold and warm episodes by season chart. So I'm just going to show you what we're going to be looking at with our with our analogues. So if we come down to 2019, this is showing on a tri-monthly basis El Nino and La Nina and exoneutral events. So we've got these blue numbers in the boxes, that's where we're at La Nina, that's where we're having a cold event. We've got the red numbers in the boxes, that's where we're having an El Nino. That's the Super Nino of 2015-16 that I was talking about in the end of the last part of this video. Where we are right now, this is 2019, so we start the year with an El Nino up to the middle part of the year, and then these black numbers, that's where we go back to exoneutral. We go back to black from the red, and we go back to exoneutral then, and we're expecting to remain at exoneutral as we fill in these boxes just here and the ones that will be placed down here for 2020. So what we're going to be focusing on for our analogues is winters where we had El Nino the previous year and into the first part of the particular year we're talking about, but the winter itself is an exoneutral winter. So to explain that, let's try and find a year that does that. And I think we'll be looking here at, let's see if I can find the right year. So, yes, I think we'll be looking at 2003-4 for one of our analogues years. So you'll see there, we've got 2002, 2003, 2002 to 2003 is a weak El Nino winter. Then we lose the red and go back to black through the rest of those tri-monthly periods into the winter of 2003-2004. It's an exoneutral winter. It's on the warm side of exoneutral as well. Winter 2003-4. And the previous winter was an El Nino. So that's what we're looking at for our analogues package. We can go further back. The CPC charts only go back to 1950, but we can go further back than that with this. This is the long-term index of El Nino and La Nina events. Our good friend James Ackers sorted that out for us. So this is how we're managing to get our analogues beyond 1950. We're going further back than that to as far back as 1865. Can you believe? So again, another analogue year we'll talk about very shortly is going to be the winter of 1866-1867, because you'll see that in 1865 we have those red colours appearing. That's an El Nino event, a weak El Nino event through the second half of 1865 into the opening tri-monthly periods of 1866. So winter of 1865-1866 was an El Nino winter. Then we go back to black and we see that the winter of 1866-1867 was in fact an ENSO neutral winter, and on the slightly warmer than average side of ENSO neutral as well. So in fact that will be our first analogue to focus on. So our first analogue for an ENSO neutral winter after an El Nino is that winter I was just talking about, 1866-1867, and this one is Atlantic driven. We have low pressure over to the north of the UK, we have high pressure down to the south, we bring in the westerlies. That's a mild and wet Atlantic driven winter for the winter of 1866-1867. The next winter is much more interesting though. This again ENSO neutral after an El Nino. This is 1878-1879. This is a very, very severe winter indeed, with strong northern blocking around Greenland, a trough of low pressure over UK and Western Europe, the jet streams down there somewhere, and we're pulling in very cold winds from the north. That's a severe winter showing up in our ENSO neutral following an El Nino analogues package, a winter of 1878-1879. The next winter is 1881-1882. This is a milder winter with low pressure up to the north, no northern blocking, low pressure to the north, high pressure centred just to the east of us. So that's a drier but also a milder winter for 1881-1882. Next up is 1897-1898. This one also a relatively mild winter with above average heights to our south, below average heights are up to the north. There's the westerly winds, so that's again a rather dry and relatively mild winter in 1897-1898. This is a colder winter. This is 1900-1901. This one again with northern blocking around Greenland, low pressure is underneath it during the ENSO neutral winter following an El Nino of 1900-1901. We'll be expecting to bring in winds from the northeast. The next winter is 1906-1907. This turned up in the first analogues package that we started this update with, of course. Low pressure to the north and to the southeast, high pressure just out to the west. It's a relatively mild winter, but it has a cold start. It's cold in for a time in December, and it does have a white Christmas. Next we have 1912-1913. This one is also another mild winter with above average heights to the east, below average heights to the west. This is a very wet winter, I think, 1912-1913, and also it's a mild winter too. 1919-1920 is our next ENSO neutral after an El Nino winter with low pressure to our north and high pressure to our south. We favour bringing in westerly winds, so that's a milder winter for 1919-1920. Next we have 1926-1927. I don't know a great deal about this winter. I think overall it's quite a dry, relatively anticyclonic and quite mild winter with low pressure to our north. The next winter is 1931-1932. This is a dry and quite cold winter with above average height centred almost, centred definitely over the top of the country. 1931-1932 is dry but quite cold. 1959-1960 is very wet. Low pressure is driving in. Let's change the colour. Low pressure is driving in from off the Atlantic. A small blocking signal, but actually this is one of the milder winters of the 1960s and also quite wet too. Next up is 1966-1967. This is also another one of the milder winters of the 1960s. So it looks like it could be quite coldish at times, but generally that's a rather mild and wet winter, I think, in 66-67. Another very interesting winter, though, is 78-79. This, again, it's an ENSO neutral winter following a weak El Nino in the winter before it. So 78, 79, of course, is the winter of discontent, the famous winter of discontent. We're blocking over Greenland and low pressure from the Atlantic into the west of Europe. The jet stream is down here as well. Very, very cold easterly winds being drawn in most of the time. That's quite a severe winter for 78, 79. Then we have 1980, 1981. This one again has above average heights out to our west, below average heights to the east. There's some cold snaps in this winter. It is a bit overshadowed by what happens at the end of the 1970s and again what happens in the winter of 81, 82. But it does have a few cold snaps, particularly I think in January 1981. Next up we have 1992, 1993. This is a mild and dry winter with high pressure over the UK, low pressure up to the north. The jet stream is pushed northwards as well. And then finally, let's just check that. So yes, finally, we have the winter of 2003, 2004. And this one is again ENSO neutral following an El Nino the previous winter. This one with above average heights out to our west, below average heights to our east. And we have some cold snaps in this winter. It's a relatively mild winter overall, 2003-4. It does get colder late on in February and through to early March. Putting all of that together, this is how all Decembers combined are looking when we are at ENSO neutral after El Nino. So we tend to have low pressure over and to the north of the country. High pressure tends to be pushed out to the west. Winds coming in from the west, possibly northwesterly direction. It's mainly Atlantic driven though, quite unsettled and relatively mild overall. That's January. All January's combined looks rather bizarre. There is a bit of a blocking signal and it does go over towards Scandinavia as well. Interestingly, but there's some weak low pressure around Iceland. Not sure what to make of that really. Bit inconclusive for January. I would assume there is a little bit of cold snap potential, but overall probably not favouring particularly cold weather. That's February though, looks quite interesting in February. We do tend to get above average heights centred around Greenland, or sort of south of Greenland into mid-Atlantic. So probably relatively dry for February, but I would have thought chances of colder weather increasing by the time you get through to February with these ENSO neutral winters following an El Nino. And then that's March, looking very, very unsettled in March. Low pressure is in from off the Atlantic, just looking mild and wet for those ENSO neutral Marches. Finally, putting all of that together, this is how all winters combined are looking with when it's ENSO neutral following on from an El Nino. So all winters combined, ENSO neutral after El Nino looks like that. Tends to have above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic and going north, below average heights to northeast. Quite unsettled signal overall. Not particularly conducive to cold weather. But particularly February does hold a little bit of cold potential with these ENSO neutral winters after an El Nino. And last but not least, if you've been enjoying the winter updates this season, if you enjoyed this 12th winter update, please can you consider becoming a patron for GWV. This is the GWV Patreon page. We have 65 patrons so far. Hello, and a big thank you to our 65 patrons. We very much hope you've been enjoying these updates. If you'd like to become a patron of GWV to give an ongoing monthly donation, all you need to do is come to GWV's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and you can pledge an ongoing monthly donation to GWV. This can be anything from $1 a month upwards. You're helping us to pay for website and the content. We're hoping we might get to 70 patrons by the end of the year, but I'm not sure we'll be able to do that. Alternatively, you can give a one-off donation through PayPal. So if you'd like to give a donation through PayPal, just come to GWV's PayPal page, sign into your PayPal account, then you can give a donation to GWV. And again, you're helping us to pay for website and helping us to pay for the content and keep content online. And a big thank you to all of our patrons and donors. Whether you do it through Patreon or PayPal, you're going to get a mention in the videos. We give a shout out and say thank you so much for doing that. Right, we have talked for 1 hour and 12 minutes, so I don't think that's bad going to get through 75 tabs in 1 hour, 12 minutes. Another epic, and I just hope you have enjoyed this season of Winter Updates. We've only got one more left to do now. Next week we will have the 13th and final Winter Update, and then that's it. That'll be the end of the Winter Update, just a last season on a roundup, and then we've got to release the forecast on the 1st of December. So we are almost now at the end of the journey, but we do have one more Winter Update for you next week, and I'm hoping to make that a little bit of an analogue special, perhaps. Right, well, that's it. So I'm going to stop the video there, and this video will be placed on the Winter Updates page later on with a written summary going over everything we discussed in the video, so you'll be able to come back and watch the video on demand whenever you would like to do that. We're going to be talking about this 12th Winter Update, among other things, in our live stream on the GWV's YouTube channel between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening, so tune in to the YouTube channel for that. But at 1 hour and 13 minutes, I hope I haven't made too many mistakes. I've not been feeling all that well, not been 100%, but at 1 hour 13 minutes, and if I have made any mistakes, very sorry about that, but at 1 hour and 13 minutes, that is all for now, and thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.